Welcome to Maven's Talk series. This session is about automation in SRE. Programmed by Digitarati, India's first IT finishing school.
From an SRE perspective, right, what I wanted to start the discussion is all about, giving you an information about what Gartner thinks about SRE and where are the various components that is impacted due to automation, or if it drives automation in terms of adoption into the overall SRE aspect. Now, this is something pretty new, which is July 2021. And if you see this hype cycle of Gartner, right, some of the aspects, which is in terms of observability, AIOps, network observability, chaos engineering, performance engineering, automated incident response, and other stuff. And these are the certain ones that I've highlighted and read are needed in SRE, and is something that also helps us to adopt automation in a big way. And we will discuss in detail in some of those components, right? Now, for me to try to focus on certain aspects of automation. Now let's start understanding the various dimensions of SRE. Okay. Now for me, if I have to adopt SRE kind of an operating model with an SRE people into my ecosystem, I need to have an automation framework in place, or I need to have the metrics, which is my SLI, SLO, error budgets. I need to have a performance engineering in place, change management, incident management, monitoring, observability, and DevOps. And it has to be a DevOps focused. Now, in this aspect also, if you look at it, right, dimensions of this SRE, your automation is one of the key pillars into this. Okay. Now, when we talk about various automation types in this particular SRE, right? Where do we stand, right? Is it AIOps? Is it toil management? Is it task automation? Is it enabling self-service? Is it incident response automation? There are various aspects to that, right? If you can just move to the next page, let's discuss those. Yeah, so before I could proceed with that, right? Let's understand from an SRE perspective, what are my typical goals that I need to achieve, or that I achieve from SRE? Point number one is reduce silos by shared ownership, which is the way it changes the culture. Plan for failure using error budgets. Now, this is very important with respect to even your automation, and I'll come to that. I've explained this particular statement in one of the slides later on. Small batch changes with focus and stability. This is very important. So whenever you're trying to enable any testing or create any testing automation or doing like a kind of an innovation, it is always recommended to have it, take a baby steps and continuously do that part instead of doing a big bang changes. Tooling and automation to reduce the manual task, and measure everything, which is monitoring the right things, right? Monitoring stuff. Now, if you look at it from an SRE goals, wherever you read through about SRE, the automation is, I would say, from a toil management perspective, which is mentioned here on the left-hand side box, the bottom one, right, which is the eliminate toil. That is something which drives your resolution, because when you have an SRE as a concept in your organization, right, the metrics like MTTR, MTTA, MTTD, mean time to resolution, for acknowledgement, for identification, all those aspects are heavily impacted because of this. Now, usually in an SRE kind of an environment, okay, this is an iceberg representation. People believe just having an automation and having a system that is scalable and reliable is something that you already have an SRE in place. No, your automation might be a task automation. It might be a build automation that you would like to have. It might be your AIOps kind of solution that you have implemented. It doesn't help you solve the challenges that you face in your IT environment, and you to solve through SRE. Okay. Let's understand the various types of automations that we try to usually have. Point number one is your build automation. Now, One of the points, the way your SRE works is it works with your DevOps team and enables them from a build automation perspective. You know, helping them defining the golden image, helping them the CI/CD process, helping them adopt into the your infra as a code using Terraform, Ansibles, and other kind of tools. Second automation is in terms of your AIOps kind of a solution. What is needed is when one of the key aspect of SRE is having the right set of observability in place. So when you have the right observability in place, that means you have been able to monitor what is needed and that for you to help you solve the problem and help your organization. Now from that, whatever you get, right, when you integrate with the learnings that you get, you start updating your AIOps solutions and other auto healing solutions that you have in your infrastructure. That will help you to solve something that is a repeatable or a predictable issues that can be solved through your auto healing solution. But what happens is there are still certain tasks which is enabling self-service, or you find just one of a case where you have an issue and that can be helped using creating a script using Python or a Perl or a shell script kind of stuff to help you automate or enable a self-service for that particular issue through for the developer. That's again we put it as part of an automation. One of other automation is incident response automation, which is very critical, right? Now, well, we try to ensure that we reduce the amount of loss that is created due to an issue or due to an error or due to a issue or something has crashed or something is not working well. It is also very important for an enterprise that the right tickets are right alerts are converted to the tickets and the tickets are routed to the right team who are entitled to solve that. Now, for example, uh, it's a very common issue in your infrastructure, right? Today, some issue, some like a proactive case comes in, like my system is having performance issues. You know, nobody knows who has to take it. It's a DB guy, your application guy, your storage guy, or your network guy. Who has to own it, right? But then those are all manual tasks comes in. But when a system generation alerts gets generated, we have a better knowledge or better understanding what is the source and where the errors are coming through. Hence, it helps us to enable to automate the complete task, starting from alert conversion to event correlation to automating creating the task. Now, uh, suppose in your infrastructure you have application which might be categorized like platinum, gold, silver based on the criticality of those applications. And criticality can be defined in various ways in your organization. In terms of it's the customer facing, it generates the largest revenue for every login that happens, or it is because that's a backbone application for rest of the other connected applications. That different way how you measure and define criticality for that particular application. Now, what happens is in your system, what you would suggest that if any errors comes in from those critical applications, it has to go directly to L2 or directly to an SRE engineer. But if it's from other set of application, non-critical or a gold or a silver set of a category of applications, it might have to go to the L1 specific to your traditional siloed queues that is working, right? Now, hence, if I have to have a person there who will try to understand the ticket source, the issue, and then put in right queue, you're going to waste a lot of time. So the whole process can be automated. I'd have taken up a slide later on which will explain this process in detail. How do you ensure an automation in an incident management process? Okay. Now, now when we have a group of engineers or consultants on your ground, and they have to they're entitled to automate and enable automation in your ecosystem, or I would say mature or make a day-to-day maturity increase that needs to happen. What are the guiding principles for me to have an automation in an SRE kind of situation? first and foremost, the most critical aspect is end user experience. Now, whatever you do, whatever support you give, and whatever automation or changes you do to the ecosystem, it has to be based on your end user experience, because any task that you perform is only to enhance the end user experience. So always keep in mind that if I have to automate this, is it what or how is it impacting my end user? Am I improving his experience in utilizing that or consuming that application? And how I can make it better? Utilize agile delivery to speed up benefits, right? Now, as I said in the previous slides, don't do a big bang approach. Think small, make certain, it might be small scripts to automate small tasks, and later on things are settled down, then you can combine a lot of the other scripts and put it into a larger workflow and get it done. But then start small and get those small, I would say, win your small battles out there. Uh, Invest in foundational capabilities. Now, this is very important. Now, from a foundational perspective, as you said, right, you need to either have a platform, either have a solution, either have a tool coming in, or a kind of or a scripting or a technology adoption that you want to, let's say Terraform or Ansible or Python, or let's say you want to standardize all your automation into on a Python platform, for example, right? So invest on those platforms so that the adoptions are faster and it becomes quite an enterprise wide kind of adoption. You don't have to have multiple teams having different discrete solutions for your automation. Uh, Simplify, standardize, streamline process and experiences. Now, which is very similar to what we are talking about in the previous slides, right? It just for the sake of automation, just don't automate stuff. Bring in those design thinking process into this ecosystem, right? Rethink, redesign the processes, and see if just only automating a particular task helps you solve it, or you still have a legacy or a baggage out there where you need to go back and fix it for having a better effective of this automation that you have built. It might be change in process, it might be impact due to your automation. What is impact on other processes, or what are other processes that is being impacted for which you are building that automation? Think wider, think more of a prefix and a postfix kind of stuff, and understand that what is the need for that automation. Engage the right business and technology partners. This is very, very critical again. Now, when you try to automate certain tasks, for you it might be a task automation, but invariably for an end user or a business who is owning that application might need or would say that he needs to happen the way it has been happening earlier. You would have a different objective or a thought of mind, or way he looks at everything. It's better that whatever plan you have made, ensure that you have the complete ecosystem in your side. Get a sign off or get an understanding in terms of, is it really whatever the task that you're trying to do is going to, is the owner of that or the stakeholder of that application or that particular entity has a buy-in into that. Align with other transformational initiatives. Again, as I said, from an ecosystem perspective, see if whatever task or automation solution that you have built in, or a script that you have built in, can it be leveraged across your enterprise by various other teams, and hence reducing the cycles of the other teams. They would have again done the same thing, reinventing the wheel, right? Doing the same thing within their particular application, or the ownership that they have, and repeating that particular task. You would have saved that time and money for that. So have a platform, an ecosystem, how you need to talk to the people, share your ideas, share your work, and see how can it becomes more of a standardized kind of a solution across the board. Execute with excellence. Yes, that's more important to whatever effort you're putting into building and planning and building that particular automation solution. If you flaw out on the execution aspect of it, all the effort goes in drain. So think it through, do test cases, test it out, then put into production. Make outcomes measurable. Yes, as I said, when you engage with the business partners, when you align with other people, when you have end user experiences as one of the criteria to look into, measuring the outcome becomes very important because that's where your success lies. So whatever you would have done as an analysis of a situation, quantify that, analyze that, list it out. When you build and implement an automation, again go back and measure all those parameters or all those experiences, and then share those information in terms of what have you brought an improvement into your enterprise. But that's not all. It also helps you to decide or think that the benefits that you have received today, is it enough or you can do better? So unless until you do not measure those outcomes, you cannot take a decision on that. Okay. uh, and bring an enterprise view. Again, important from a cost and adoption perspective. Is it something that you're trying to do is very specific to one set of application or one set of business unit or one set of group? Can this be bubbled up to ensure that it can be adopted across your enterprise, so that if you save time, you save money for the rest of the other units, right? And and even you can make a business case in terms of talking about how, if you use this particular solution that you have created, purposed, leave out even people coming in and proactively asking you what you have done. But I'm talking the other way around, where you can go in and say, okay, I can see you also have this similar issue. You can repurpose my solution that I've built, and focus on values and objectives. Again, as I said, what is the benefit you're bringing in? What is the objective that you achieved because of your automation? So this matters. So whenever you are on a role where you're entitled to automate tasks, bring in automation either as a off-the-shelf solution or as a script, these all 10 guiding principles drives you to, I would say, excellence in whatever outcomes or whatever task you're trying to do out there. Now, what I wanted to represent here is from a maturity model of SRE, right? The first basic thing that we get into is observability. Okay. Under observability, there are a lot of things that can be automated, in terms of, from your distributed tracing to your telemetry to your log analysis, for AIOps into that from an observability perspective. The telemetry aspect, which we said, that how do you ensure that you identify the golden signals and ensure that all these alerts or data is been shipped into a repository where you can do those analysis, right? So there is again an automation flavor there. Chaos engineering, I think so, something very common nowadays, though in the Gartner cycle you said it is still in the very early stage of hype, right? But from a chaos engineering, whatever you can do, point number one is you can automate the task or the errors that you want to infuse into your infrastructure. Second, you can automate and restrict the blast radius due to chaos engineering. Now, suppose you want to infuse an error and you say, I only want, anything beyond 100 servers should not be impacted. You make a restrictions around that. Or you can say, I just only have to have n-1 and n-2 systems only, nothing beyond that. So from that perspective, the whole aspect of chaos engineering can be automated. Automated impact assessment is by default, your error budget consumptions and other stuff, and we have a slide explaining that. Self-healing, yes, the AIOps and automation solution for self-healing is important, because those are all your repetitive tasks that is common across your enterprise and that needs to be automated. So that's a self-healing. These are more of a predictable ones, right? But the self-services is those unpredictable issues that comes in, and you have to get in there and using, again, coming down to your shell script or Python or Perl or any of the tools that enables an automation, right? That's where you have to bring in those automation and enable your self-service. So, and this is typically more manual in building it up. How do you build a script? How do you build an automation solution and implement out there? Because this is typically for those unpredictable or one of an issue. Like for example, you have 1,000 servers, and this issue has come under for one server under one application. But you need to help your application owner by helping him to enable a self-service, because next time this issue happens, you can actually just double click on the script and script runs and everything is fixed. But what happens during your self-service is your SRE engineer, as part of his role, will update your backlog, that these are the things that needs to be relooked. As part of the backlog management, your SRE engineer, your DevOps team, your SRE automation team are going to review those backlogs and see, is it that we just built a script and give it and that is over, or is it that I have to update my DevOps team so that the next release that they have for that particular value stream or for that particular services can be updated as a patch or a changes into that particular product, so that will enable you to solve it from a permanent perspective, right? So you don't get that issue anymore. And self-service, and instead of enabling self-service, you just eliminated that particular issue. So that comes in when the 50% of the time your SRE guys starts discussing with other teams from an error budgets perspective, from your backlogs perspective. Now, when we get into that, right? So, is there a method just writing a script or writing a code for automation? Just write it and run it? No, there's a method to it, right? If you see the next page, Prakash. Okay. Now, what I've tried to done, based on my experience, I just put in a workflow out here. If I have to start building an automation, right? So let's say I'm just giving an example, like you have to build an Ansible runbook or for an automation requirement. Starting, so pointed here. I'm sorry, I'm not used to this. Anyways, starting with this automation requirement, you have a requirement coming in. You understand the requirement. You build an update. You create a script, or you already have an existing script, and you find that you just appending or updating that also will solve the purpose of whatever current issue that you have. You do that, right? Now, I build a test case. Now, once you have a script, ensure that you have at least 3 to 4 test cases where you can run this particular script, test it out, and then say yes. Then you can take a decision or a definitive decision that you want to put it into your production. So once you test the script, is it successful? Yes. Move for the deployment. No. Go back and build and go back and look at the test cases, look at the problems, and go back again to the second point. Have you really understood the requirement, or do you still think there is further more details that is needed for you to have a better script or a better automation created? Now, once your test is successful, you overlook into the deployment, you deploy it, monitor. It's more about your stabilizing aspect of it. Monitor for the first few runs in your production. Deployment is successful. You see it is executing those tasks it is entitled to, and you close that your ticket that comes in through for your automation aspect of it. It's a logical flow. It's just not just not that I have to create a script and put into production that helps. No, that's a typical wrong method. So this is an ideal way. You need to actually, from an ideation to an execution aspect of an automation, right? Adhere to this particular workflow. Now, this is again a very important, right? In the previous page, you saw how a test case or an automation script is built and how you need to adhere to a process to to test it and implement it, right? Now, when you implement in the production, there might be a situation where it might not work. It might work, or automation would create challenges into the system, which is, I would not say from a positive manner. It says some hung issues or other stuff that comes into play. But does it really stop you from an innovation perspective? Not really. Now, in an SRE perspective, you would have a couple of things, right? When you start defining your SLIs and SLOs, you also have an error budgets in place. Now, your error budgets are a budget that can be consumed by you, where you can actually fail within that error budget. Like, let's say, for example, your error budget is 4 hours in 3 months, for example, for a quarter. Now, if you see, in that 4 hours, I can make the necessary changes, update, test the scripts of my automation, see the system crashing or not, whatever that I have to do. I have 4 hours in my one quarter where I can afford to fail without any impact to my enterprise or organization. Now, if you look at this particular screen, right, the dotted lines on the graph are error budgets. If you see the one that is in yellow, are the places where the customer is not innovating much, either updating the patches, updating new features, adding new functionalities, testing automations, whatever we call it as from an innovation or a betterment or maturity. The green ones, if you see, are the ones where I am consuming my error budget aptly and ensuring that I'm having a system which is much better than what I had yesterday. The red ones are again a dangerous one. They're innovating too fast, too much, and they're exceeding the error budget. That means when you exceed an error budget, you are actually uh, breaching out all the terms and SLAs that you would have. So always understand what is your error budgets that is there for your applications. Whenever you're trying to do the testing and see, and when you make those test cases for that in a non-production environment, see how much time does it take, what's an impact that happens in, and then you can go back to your to the owner and say that let's say my testing would take not more than 1 hour based on my all conditions coming into considerations. So I say if my error budget is 4 hours, I can go back to the stakeholder and say, you have an error budget of 4 hours. I'm going to consume 1 hour for this particular quarter because I have to do test this. That's all. And you get an approval and you go ahead and do the implementation, the productions, rollback plans and other stuff in place, and you consume your error budget. So even your system goes down or you need to reboot the systems, it is still acceptable for by your enterprise. Okay. I know, this list is huge. I just put in whatever I could think of, the areas that we're talking about, right? Various automation tools that is used. Now, starting from your application release orchestration, cloud provisioning, configuration management, incident response automation, performance engineering, cloud configuration manager management. So some of the tools that we have seen customers use, okay, and this is a very small list, okay. Every section you will find quite another 10, 20 more into that. But it also gives you an idea that one tool is not a nirvana, right? For you need to have multiple solutions or a platform which will have all these individual solutions as a plugin into there to achieve your overall objective of your automation. In the previous slide, you saw about the IRA, right? Incident response automation. This is something very different and is very essential for an enterprise to have that. It might not be must to have, it might come in good to have, but then somebody who has had it has always benefited the most. Okay. Now, in what happens in this incident response automation? Okay. Now on the left hand side of IRA is where all your alerts are generated or are coming through, either from your microservices or your front-end applications or your DevOps tools and your databases and applications and other stuff that comes. From everywhere, you have either through a distributed tracing that you're doing a log aggregation, or you're doing an app through your APMs that you have. Okay, whatever you collect, okay, those alerts are collected, and at this particular, which is the IRA part, right, this is where your event correlation happens. Okay, once an event correlation happens, what happens is some of the alerts will be removed as because it's a known maintenance task going on, and you don't have to put an emphasis on that. Suppression is might not be, it's just an alert, not anything pertaining to any issue or an error, might be an exclamation or a blue tick, right? But after you deduplicate that, you will have a common, or I would say lesser number of I would say impactful alerts, which needs to be looked into. Okay. Now there is a tagging policy that comes in out here, right? And tagging policy is something you need to define for your based on your enterprise. And I'll repeat the example where you had that platinum, gold, and silver, right? So you would know if my platinum application is installed on 50 servers, I can say this application plus I can say if the source are from these all servers plus if this is from this application, then please take the ticket and put it right directly to an SRE or an L2 or an L3 engineer directly. Okay, that's something that you can do from a routing policy. So tagging is how you tag each of these sources. Routing policy is based on the tag. You say this is platinum, it has to go to L2, then this is a routing policy created. But on the routing policy, based on that, you need to have a defined escalation policy. Okay, and why it is needed. I believe even for your organization, you will also have something called as MTTA, right? Which is mean time to acknowledge. And that's again very critical for which impacts your MTTR. Now, due to some reason, your ticket stays in a queue for long, nobody's picking it up. You breach your SLA. You breach the resolution time agreed with your application or your stakeholder. So what happens is, in this kind of solution, on the right hand side, if there's a various notification type, right? Email, push, phone, chat ops, or pager, page, whatever you have. So based on the escalation policy, let's say that once the ticket hits the queue, everyone will get a push notification who are entitled for who are part of that particular queue. Within 5 minutes, if nobody has responded, nobody has acknowledged or picked up the ticket, then an email goes to each and every one. Within 10 minutes, if nobody responds, a SMS goes to your team lead. Within 20 minutes, nobody responds, then a phone call goes to your duty manager and says that you're going to breach your SLA. Somebody needs to pick this up. So somebody, this particular system or a solution will enforce you to adhere or work within your SLAs that has been agreed. Okay. Further that, it also, your incident acknowledgement, your solution leading to auto healings and other stuff. That's a standard troubleshooting works that happens. But one of the major part of it is this incident acknowledgement, incident creation, incident identification, tagging and routing to the right team and enforcing them to be adhering to SLA is very, very important. And in traditional manner, it used to be done manually. Huge chaos, large number of ticket hops. A ticket is created. This guy says, not mine, not mine. I will not put it to him. 5 different teams gets involved. It's a chaos. And it takes even 1 hour, 2 hours for somebody to even start working on it. And even 1 hour, 2 hour is also a huge time for a business to afford that error or that downtime that's coming in through. Because for every hour, there is some amount of dollar loss that has been aligned into. Now, in many places also, you will find that the customer or your user would say, I have implemented AIOps. I'm well suited, right? I don't need anything else. But then there are situations where your AIOps will not work because it's been coded to do an X kind of work, right? Systems change, alerts change, different types of things come in. There are certain challenges which cannot be caught by your typical alerts, but something that you need to still automate, right? So usually what we say is that, look, if you look at this particular flow, starting from your sources of the alerts coming in, having your observability framework in place, you have a predictive AI ops with log analytics that happens, then you end up with service management and automation. In that automation that you have created, right? That means it's you have already implemented the AIOps from a predictive modeling to into an auto healing or a solution or helping to solve that. But rest of it, what is cannot be solved, has to be done as a toil management or through scripts and other stuff by your SRE engineer, right? So myth, AIOps solves everything. Reality, you need to have an SRE guy or an automation guy who can, from an SRE perspective with your AIOps to have a better success in your infrastructure.